Sarah Martinez stared at the recruitment poster on the wall of the military base's waiting room. The image showed a sharp-eyed soldier peering through a rifle scope, with bold letters reading, "Precision, Patience, Excellence." She traced her fingers along the edge of her enlistment papers, trying to ignore the whispered conversations around her. "Look at her," one recruit muttered to another. "She can barely hold that clipboard steady. How's she gonna handle a rifle?" Sarah's hands weren't shaking from nerves, though everyone assumed they were. She had a mild tremor condition that made her movements appear unsteady, especially when she was tired or stressed. It wasn't severe enough to disqualify her from military service, but it was noticeable enough to make people doubt her capabilities. The recruitment officer, Sergeant Davis, called her name. As she stood up, her chair scraped loudly against the floor and she nearly dropped her papers. A few snickers echoed from behind her. She straightened her shoulders and walked to the desk, determined not to let their assumptions define her. "So, Martinez," Sergeant Davis said, flipping through her file. "You've indicated interest in marksmanship training. That's unusual for someone with your condition." He gestured vaguely at her hands. Sarah met his gaze steadily. "My condition doesn't affect my vision or my determination, sir. I've been hunting with my grandfather since I was 12. I know I can do this." Sergeant Davis raised an eyebrow. "Hunting deer is different from military precision shooting, soldier. But we'll see what you're made of during basic training." Over. The next few weeks, Sarah threw herself into every aspect of military training. She excelled in academics, physical fitness, and tactical exercises. But when it came time for weapons training, the doubts resurged. Her bunkmate, Jessica, watched as Sarah struggled to load magazines quickly during timed drills. "Maybe you should consider switching to communications or logistics," Jessica suggested one evening as they cleaned their gear. "There's no shame in playing to your strengths." Sarah looked up from the rifle she was methodically cleaning. "This is my strength. People just can't see it yet." The weapons instructor, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, had been watching Sarah's progress, with a mixture of curiosity and concern. She scored decently on the shooting range, but her times were slower than average, and her technique looked unconventional. During individual coaching sessions, he noticed something interesting, though. When Sarah wasn't being timed or watched by a crowd, her shots were remarkably consistent. "Martinez," he called after one particularly frustrating group session where she'd finished last in a speed-loading exercise. "Walk with me." They strolled to the edge of the range, away from the other recruits. "I've been doing this for 15 years, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez said. "I can usually tell within the first week who's going to make it and who's going to wash out. You're an interesting case." Sarah braced herself for another lecture about realistic expectations. "Your fundamentals are solid," he continued, surprising her. "Your breathing control is excellent and your sight alignment is textbook perfect, but you're fighting against yourself, trying to move faster than your body allows." "Why?" "Because everyone expects me to fail," Sarah replied honestly. "They see my hands shake and assume I can't shoot. So I try to prove them wrong by doing everything at their speed." Staff Sergeant Rodriguez nodded slowly. "Here's the thing about precision shooting, Martinez. It's not about speed. It's about consistency. A sniper might wait hours for the perfect shot. They don't rush." He paused at the 500-meter target range, pointing to the distant bullseyes. "Tomorrow I want you to forget about the time limits. Focus only on accuracy. Show me what you can really do when you're not trying to impress anyone." That night, Sarah lay in her bunk thinking about the instructor's words. Around her, other recruits discussed their plans after basic training. Most had already decided on their military specialties. Sarah still wasn't sure she'd even make it through the initial weapons qualification. "Hey, Martinez," called out Thompson, a recruit who'd been particularly vocal about her supposed limitations. "My money says you wash out by week 6. No offense, but this isn't a charity program." Sarah didn't respond. She'd learned that defending herself only provided more ammunition for the doubters. Instead, she closed her eyes and visualized tomorrow's shooting exercise. She imagined herself moving at her own pace, breathing steadily, focusing only on the target, The next morning brought gray skies and a cold wind that made everyone's hands stiff. Perfect conditions for separating the confident shooters from the truly skilled ones. Sarah watched as recruit after recruit stepped up to the firing line, their shots scattered wide due to the challenging conditions. When her turn came, she ignored the expectant whispers from behind her. She settled into position, feeling the rifle's weight distribute across her body. The tremor in her hands seemed to steady when she gripped the weapon properly. She controlled her breathing, let her heart rate slow, and found her natural rhythm. First shot rang out, then the second. By the third shot, the whispers had stopped. By the fifth shot, other recruits were leaning forward to see her target through their scopes. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez lowered his binoculars and smiled. In challenging conditions that had others struggling to hit the target at all, Sarah had placed 5 shots in a grouping tighter than many experienced soldiers could manage. The girl they claimed would never get it had just demonstrated the kind of natural accuracy that couldn't be taught. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered under his breath, making a note in her file that would change everything. Word of Sarah's exceptional shooting spread through the base faster than wildfire. By evening chow, recruits who had barely acknowledged her existence were suddenly interested in sitting at her table. But Sarah noticed the attention came with a price. The same people who had written her off now looked at her with suspicion, as if her success somehow diminished their own efforts. "Lucky shot," Thompson muttered as he passed her in the mess hall. "Let's see if you can do it again." Sarah didn't need to prove anything to Thompson, but she found herself eager to return to the range. For the first time since arriving at basic training, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had scheduled additional marksmanship sessions for interested recruits, and Sarah signed up immediately. The advanced shooting sessions took place at dawn, before the regular training schedule began. Only 6 recruits participated, and Sarah quickly realized she was the only one who attended every session. The others came sporadically, treating it as extra credit rather than a calling. During these early morning sessions, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez introduced more challenging scenarios. Moving targets, varying distances, different shooting positions, and adverse weather conditions. While other recruits complained about the difficulty, Sarah thrived. Her scores consistently improved and her groupings became tighter. Martinez, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez called after a particularly impressive performance where she'd hit 19 out of 20 moving targets. "I need to make a phone call, don't go anywhere." Sarah waited nervously, wondering if she'd somehow violated a protocol she wasn't aware of. 20 minutes later, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez returned with a tall, weathered man in dress uniform. The insignia on his collar indicated he was a master sergeant, and the patches on his sleeve told a story of multiple deployments and specialized training. "This is Master Sergeant Blake," Staff Sergeant Rodriguez said. "He runs the sniper school at Fort Campbell. I've been telling him about your progress." Master Sergeant Blake studied Sarah with intense gray eyes. Everything about him suggested precision and economy of movement. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but carried absolute authority. "Recruit Martinez, I understand you've been showing some promise on the range." "Yes, sir," Sarah replied, unsure what else to say. "I've been watching you shoot for the past hour," Master Sergeant Blake continued. "Your technique is unorthodox, but your results speak for themselves. More importantly, you demonstrate the kind of patience and focus that can't be trained into someone. Either you have it or you don't." He gestured toward the 800-meter range. "I want to see how you handle long-distance shooting. This isn't part of your basic training curriculum, but Staff Sergeant Rodriguez thinks you're ready for it." Sarah felt her heart rate spike, but she nodded. The 800-meter range was where the real marksmen proved themselves. She'd only ever shot at targets half that distance. Master Sergeant Blake handed her a different rifle, heavier and more sophisticated than the standard issue weapon she'd been using. "This is an M24 sniper rifle," he explained. "It's what our precision shooters use in the field. The scope is already zeroed, but you'll need to account for wind speed and drop over this distance." Sarah accepted the weapon with reverence. The rifle felt substantial in her hands, purposeful. Master Sergeant Blake walked her through the ballistics, Calculations, explaining how environmental factors would affect bullet trajectory at extended range. Take your time, he said as Sarah settled into position. This isn't a speed test, it's about understanding your capabilities. Sarah positioned herself behind the rifle, adjusting the stock until it felt comfortable. Through the scope, the target looked impossibly small. She observed the grass near the target, noting the wind direction and strength. Her breathing slowed automatically, falling into the rhythm she'd developed over weeks of practice. The first shot felt different than any she'd taken before. The rifle's recoil was sharper, and the sound was deeper. She worked the bolt smoothly, chambering another round while keeping her eye on the target. Through the scope, she could see a small hole in the outer ring of the bullseye. Not bad for a first attempt at this distance, Master Sergeant Blake said. Adjust 2 clicks right and 1 click up. Sarah made the adjustments and settled in again. The second shot landed closer to center. The third shot was even better. By the 5th shot, she had found her rhythm with the new weapon and distance. The final grouping, while not perfect, was impressive for someone shooting long range for the first time. Master Sergeant Blake examined the target through his spotting scope. Recruit Martinez, in my 22 years of military service, I've evaluated hundreds of potential snipers. Most struggle to hit the target at all on their first attempt at 800 meters. Your group size would be respectable for someone with months of training. He turned to face her directly. I'm recommending you for advanced marksmanship evaluation after you complete basic training. If you're interested and if you qualify, there might be a spot for you in sniper school. Sarah felt dizzy. Sniper school was the most elite marksmanship training the military offered. The selection process was notoriously difficult, and the training itself had a high dropout rate. Sir, I'm honored, but I'm not sure I'm qualified for something like that. That's not for you to decide, Master Sergeant Blake replied. It's for the instructors at sniper school to determine. But I'll tell you this, natural shooting ability like yours is rare. It would be a waste not to develop it fully. As they walked back from the range, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez pulled Sarah aside. Martinez, I need you to understand something. Master Sergeant Blake doesn't make recommendations lightly. In the 5 years I've known him, I've seen him evaluate maybe 50 potential snipers. You're only the 3rd person he's recommended for advanced training. Sarah looked back at the 800-meter range, still processing what had just happened. A few hours ago, she was just another recruit struggling to fit in. Now she was being considered for the most prestigious marksmanship program in the military. That evening, word of her long-range shooting session had spread throughout the company. The atmosphere in the barracks had changed. Some recruits looked at her with new respect, while others seemed resentful of her sudden prominence. Thompson approached her during evening cleanup. So I heard you think you're sniper material now, he said, loud enough for others to hear. Don't let one good day go to your head, Martinez. The real test is consistency, and we all know you've got shaky hands. Sarah continued cleaning her rifle without looking up. I'm not thinking anything, Thompson. I'm just taking training one day at a time. But privately, she allowed herself to imagine what sniper school might be like. For the first time since enlisting, she could see a path forward that played to her actual strengths rather than asking her to overcome perceived weaknesses. The girl they claimed would never get it was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, she already had. Basic training graduation came faster than Sarah expected. While other recruits celebrated their assignments to various military occupational specialties, Sarah waited nervously for news about her application to sniper school. Master Sergeant Blake had submitted his recommendation weeks ago, but the selection process was shrouded in mystery. 3 days after graduation, Sarah received orders to report to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, for advanced marksmanship evaluation. The orders came with a warning that this was not a guarantee of acceptance into sniper school, merely an assessment of her potential. The bus ride to Fort Campbell gave Sarah time to think about how much her life had changed in just a few months. She remembered the first day at basic training, when everyone assumed she'd wash out within weeks. Now she was being considered for one of the most challenging programs the military offered. Fort Campbell was different from basic training. The atmosphere was more serious, more professional. Sarah reported to the sniper school headquarters, a modest building that didn't hint at the elite program it housed. The receptionist, a staff sergeant with sniper tabs on his uniform, directed her to a waiting room where 4 other candidates sat silently. Sarah recognized the type immediately. They were all male, all appeared supremely confident, and all had the bearing of soldiers who'd never doubted their abilities. She took an empty chair and tried not to feel intimidated by their obvious experience and self-assurance. "First time?" asked the soldier sitting next to her. He was older than the others, probably in his late 20s with the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen combat. "Yes," Sarah replied. "You?" "Second time," he said. "Didn't make it through the first time. Mental game got to me. I'm hoping this time will be different." He extended his hand. "Sergeant Williams." "Private Martinez." Sergeant Williams studied her for a moment. "You're young to be trying out for sniper school. Most candidates have at least a few years of infantry experience." Before Sarah could respond, a voice called from the doorway. "Candidates, follow me." The instructor was a chief warrant officer named Mitchell. Everything about him suggested competence and attention to detail. He led them to a classroom where several other instructors waited. Sarah counted 12 candidates total, ranging from fresh-faced privates to experienced sergeants. "Welcome to Advanced Marksmanship Evaluation." "Chief," Mitchell began, "over the next week we will assess your shooting ability, your mental toughness, and your potential for sniper training. This is not sniper school. This is us determining whether you're worth the Army's investment in sniper school." He gestured to the other instructors. "These gentlemen are all graduate snipers with combat experience. They will evaluate every aspect of your performance. Some of you will be recommended for sniper school. Most of you will not. Questions?" "No." One raised their hand. "The first phase is a shooting assessment," Chief Mitchell continued. "You'll engage targets at various distances using different weapon systems. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for consistency and the ability to learn quickly." The shooting assessment took place over 2 days. Sarah found herself competing against candidates with years of military experience, some of whom had already completed combat deployments. She tried not to think about their advantages and focused on what Master Sergeant Blake had taught her: consistency over speed, patience over pressure. The first day involved familiar distances and weapons. Sarah performed well, but so did most of the other candidates. It was the second day that proved more challenging. The instructors introduced scenarios that simulated combat conditions, shooting from awkward positions, engaging multiple targets in sequence, and operating under time pressure while maintaining accuracy. During a particularly difficult exercise that required shooting from a rooftop position at targets 600 meters away, Sarah noticed several candidates becoming frustrated. The wind was gusty, making trajectory calculations difficult, and the shooting position was uncomfortable. 2 candidates had already been dismissed for unsafe weapon handling under stress. Sarah settled into position and observed the wind patterns for several minutes before taking her first shot. She ignored the impatient shuffling of candidates waiting their turn and focused on understanding the environmental conditions. Her first shot was close to center, and each subsequent shot improved as she adjusted to the conditions. "Time," called the instructor. Sarah had taken fewer shots than the allotted maximum, but her grouping was tighter than any candidate who'd shot before her. That evening, Sergeant Williams approached her in the dining facility. "I've been watching you shoot," he said. "You've got something special. The instructors are talking about you." "What are they saying?" Sarah asked, not sure she wanted to know. "That you shoot like someone with years of experience, but you think like someone who's still learning. That's a rare combination. Most experienced shooters develop bad habits and become resistant to instruction. You're like a blank slate, but with natural ability." The third day brought psychological evaluation. Candidates were subjected to various stress tests designed to assess their mental resilience and decision-making abilities under pressure. Sarah found herself in scenarios that tested her ability to remain calm while being verbally challenged, to maintain focus while distracted, and to make accurate assessments under time pressure. One exercise particularly stood out. Candidates were placed in a dimly lit room with multiple screens showing potential targets mixed with civilians. They had to identify valid targets and simulate engagement while instructors shouted contradictory orders and created distractions. Several candidates cracked under the pressure, either freezing up or making poor decisions. Sarah found the chaos oddly focusing. The more distracting the environment became, the more she seemed to narrow her attention to what mattered. She identified targets accurately and maintained her composure despite the artificial stress. On the fourth day, Chief Mitchell called the remaining 8 candidates together. 4 had been dismissed during the previous days for various reasons. Congratulations on making it this far, he said. Today's exercise will determine who gets recommended for sniper school. You'll be given a single shot at a target 1,000 meters away. This is beyond the distance most of you have ever attempted. Weather conditions are not ideal. You'll have one spotter, but ultimately the shot is yours to make. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. 1,000 meters was nearly double the longest shot she'd ever attempted. The margin for error at that distance was minimal, and environmental factors became critically important. Candidates will shoot in alphabetical order, Chief Mitchell announced. Sarah realized with a mixture of relief and anxiety that she would shoot last. She could watch the other candidates and learn from their attempts, but she'd also have to deal with the psychological pressure of going last. One by one, the candidates took their shots. Some missed the target entirely. Others hit the target, but nowhere near the center. A few managed decent shots that would have been impressive under normal circumstances. Finally, it was Sarah's turn. She approached the firing line with Chief Mitchell serving as her spotter. Through the scope, the target looked impossibly small. The wind was variable and heat shimmer made precise aiming difficult. "Take your time, Martinez," Chief Mitchell said quietly. "This shot will determine whether you get the opportunity you've been working toward." Sarah settled behind the rifle and began her mental calculations. Wind speed, direction, bullet drop, environmental conditions, everything had to be perfect. She controlled her breathing and found her natural rhythm. The tremor in her hands, which had caused so many people to doubt her abilities, seemed to disappear when she was completely focused. She squeezed the trigger slowly, feeling the rifle recoil against her shoulder. Through the scope, she watched the bullet's impact on the target. The shot had landed in the inner ring of the bullseye. Not perfect, but well within the acceptable range for someone attempting their first shot at 1,000 meters. Chief Mitchell lowered his binoculars and looked at her with something approaching respect. "Martinez, that was the best shot of the day, and it was your first attempt at this distance." As they walked back from the range, Chief Mitchell continued talking. "I'm recommending you for sniper school, but I need you to understand what you're getting into. The training is mentally and physically demanding. The dropout rate is over 60%. Are you prepared for that level of challenge?" Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the doubters at basic training to this conversation about sniper school, she'd consistently exceeded expectations that others had set for her. "Sir, I've been preparing for this challenge my whole life. I just didn't know it until recently." Sniper school began with a sobering statistic. Of the 24 students who started the 10-week program, historical data suggested that fewer than 10 would graduate. The lead instructor, Master Sergeant Thompson, made this clear during the first day orientation. "Look around this room," he said. "Most of you will not be here at the end. This program will test every aspect of your character, your skills, and your determination. We don't lower standards for anyone for any reason." Sarah took note of her classmates. She was the only woman in the class and one of the youngest students. Several of her classmates were combat veterans with multiple deployments. Others were experienced marksmen from various military units. All of them had earned their place through demonstrated excellence. The first week focused on marksmanship fundamentals. While Sarah expected this to be her strength, the instructors approached shooting with a level of precision and technical depth she hadn't encountered before. Every aspect of shooting technique was broken down, analyzed, and rebuilt from the ground up. Instructor Staff Sergeant Rodriguez worked individually with each student. When he reached Sarah, he He spent considerable time observing her natural shooting style. "Martinez, you've got excellent instincts, but we need to refine your technique for consistency at extreme ranges," he said. "At 1,500 meters, small errors in fundamentals become major misses." The academic portion of the program was equally demanding. Students learned ballistics, meteorology, range estimation, and target analysis. Sarah discovered that successful sniping required as much brain power as shooting skill. Calculating bullet trajectories at extreme distances involved complex mathematics that accounted for dozens of variables. During evening study sessions, Sarah often found herself working alongside Sergeant First Class Davis, a veteran with 3 combat tours who'd become an informal leader among the students. "Martinez, you're picking up the academic stuff faster than most," he observed one night as they worked through ballistics calculations. "But the real test comes when you have to apply it all under pressure." The pressure arrived during week 3 with the introduction of field exercises. Students were required to move undetected across terrain, establish shooting positions, and engage targets while remaining hidden from opposing forces. These exercises combined all aspects of sniper training: marksmanship, fieldcraft, camouflage, and tactical thinking. During one particularly challenging exercise, Sarah and her partner, Specialist Jackson, were tasked with reaching an observation point 2 miles away, gathering intelligence on simulated enemy positions, and engaging specific targets without being detected. The movement phase proved more difficult than Sarah anticipated. Jackson, despite his infantry experience, struggled with the slow, methodical pace required for undetected movement. After 4 hours, they had covered less than half the required distance. "This is taking too long," Jackson whispered during a rest break. "We need to move faster, or we won't make the timeline." Sarah studied the terrain ahead. The direct route would expose them to observation from multiple directions. The longer, more concealed route would take additional hours but offered better security. "Speed doesn't matter if we get spotted," she replied. "The mission requires us to reach the position undetected. Let's stick to the concealed route." Jackson disagreed, but Sarah's quiet confidence convinced him to follow her lead. They continued the painstaking movement, using every bit of available concealment. When they finally reached the observation point, they had only 30 minutes remaining to complete the shooting portion of the exercise. Through their spotting scope, Sarah identified the assigned targets among various decoys and obstacles. The shots required precise calculations due to extreme range and crosswind conditions. She had time for careful consideration of each shot, but no margin for error. Her first shot struck the primary target center mass. The second shot, at an even greater distance, required adjustment for wind and elevation changes. She took her time, recalculated based on observed conditions, and squeezed off the shot. Another hit. "Damn, Martinez," Jackson whispered. "Those were some incredible shots." They completed the mission successfully, but Sarah noticed that several other teams had failed various aspects of the exercise. The instructors were methodically eliminating students who couldn't meet the demanding standards. Week 5 brought urban sniper training, simulating operations in built-up areas. Sarah found this environment more challenging than rural field work. The acoustic properties of urban terrain made concealment more difficult, and the presence of simulated civilians complicated target identification. During one urban exercise, Sarah was positioned in a building overlooking a busy street scenario. Her mission was to protect a VIP convoy from potential threats among the pedestrians and vehicles below. The exercise was designed to test decision-making under pressure and the ability to distinguish between legitimate targets and innocent civilians. Sarah observed the scene through her scope for 20 minutes before identifying a genuine threat. A role player dressed as a civilian was positioning himself with a clear shot at the convoy route, and his behavior patterns suggested hostile intent. The shot was technically challenging, requiring her to engage through a narrow window opening at an oblique angle. She calculated the ballistics carefully, accounting for the unusual trajectory and potential for ricochet in the urban environment. When she took the shot, it struck the target precisely, neutralizing the threat without endangering nearby civilians. The instructor monitoring her position, Staff Sergeant Kim, nodded approvingly. Excellent patience and target discrimination, Martinez. Many students would have rushed that shot or engaged the wrong target. By week 7, the class had been reduced to 14 students. Sarah had consistently performed well across all aspects of training, but she noticed that academic excellence and shooting skills weren't enough for everyone. Several talented marksmen had been eliminated for deficiencies in fieldcraft or tactical thinking. The psychological pressure of the program was becoming evident. Students who had entered with supreme confidence were beginning to doubt themselves. The constant evaluation, the high standards, and the knowledge that most would fail created an atmosphere of intense stress. Sarah found herself becoming a source of calm stability for her remaining classmates. Her methodical approach to problems and her ability to maintain composure under pressure earned respect from students who initially had doubts about her capabilities. "You know what I like about shooting with Martinez?" Sergeant First Class Davis commented to other students during a break between exercises. "She never gets rattled. Doesn't matter if it's a simple 300-meter shot or something complex at extreme range. She approaches every shot the same way." The final field exercise of week 8 would determine who advanced to the graduation phase. Students were divided into pairs and given a complex mission requiring 3 days of independent operation. Sarah was partnered with Corporal Williams, a quiet, competent soldier who had consistently performed well throughout the program. Their mission required them to move 12 miles across varied terrain, establish multiple observation posts, gather intelligence on simulated enemy activities, and execute precision shots at targets of opportunity. They would be evaluated on every aspect of sniper operations: movement, concealment, observation, communication, and marksmanship. The exercise began before dawn on a Monday morning. Sarah and Williams moved out with minimal equipment, carrying everything they needed for 3 days of independent operation. The first day went smoothly. They covered the required distance, established their initial observation post, and began gathering intelligence on the target area. The second day brought challenging weather. Rain made movement more difficult and affected visibility for observation and shooting. Several target opportunities presented themselves, but the conditions made accurate shooting nearly impossible. "We could wait for the weather to clear," Williams suggested as they observed a high-value target through the rain. Sarah studied the conditions carefully. The wind was steady, and the rain was consistent rather than variable. While challenging, the shot was possible with the right calculations. "I can make this shot," she said quietly. "The conditions are difficult but predictable." She adjusted for the environmental factors and engaged the target successfully. Williams looked at her with genuine amazement. "Martinez, I've been in the Army for 8 years, and I've never seen anyone make shots like you do under these conditions." On the final day, they faced their most challenging scenario. Multiple targets appeared simultaneously at different distances and directions. Success required rapid target prioritization, quick position changes, and maintaining accuracy while operating under time pressure. Sarah's methodical training paid off. She engaged targets in order of priority, moved efficiently between positions, and maintained her accuracy despite the pressure. When the exercise concluded, she and Williams had successfully completed all mission requirements. That evening, Master Sergeant Thompson addressed the remaining 11 students. "Congratulations on completing the field exercise phase. Based on your performance over the past 8 weeks, the following students will advance to graduation testing." He read 7 names. Sarah's name was among them, as were Sergeant First Class Davis and Corporal Williams. 4 students, including her urban exercise partner Jackson, had been eliminated. As Sarah prepared for the final phase of training, she reflected on how far she'd come. The girl who had been told she'd never make it was now one of 7 students remaining in one of the military's most demanding programs. But she knew the hardest test was still ahead. The final week of sniper school introduced the remaining 7 students to Master Chief Petty Officer Samuel Morrison, a legend in the special operations community. Morrison had more confirmed kills than any active sniper in the military and had trained some of the most elite marksmen across all service branches. His presence at the school meant the graduation testing would be unlike anything the students had experienced. "I've been watching your progress throughout this program," Morrison announced to the small group. "You seven represent the potential future of military precision shooting, but potential means nothing without proof." Morrison was different from the other instructors. Where they were professional and demanding, he was quietly intense, with the bearing of someone who had operated at the highest levels of warfare. Everything about him suggested absolute competence and hard-earned wisdom. "The graduation test will consist of 3 phases," he continued. "Academic examination, practical shooting assessment, and a final field problem that will push you to your limits. Only students who excel in all 3 phases will graduate." The academic examination covered everything they had learned: ballistics, meteorology, target analysis, mission planning, and tactical considerations. Sarah had always performed well in academic subjects, but the depth and complexity of the questions challenged even her thorough preparation. One question required calculating bullet trajectory for a shot at 1,800 meters across a valley with variable wind conditions and significant elevation changes. Another asked for a complete mission analysis of a hypothetical urban sniper scenario, including equipment selection, position analysis, escape routes, and rules of engagement considerations. Sarah worked methodically through each problem, drawing on knowledge she had accumulated over 10 weeks of intensive training. When time was called, she felt confident she had performed well, but she knew that academic success alone wouldn't guarantee graduation. The practical shooting assessment took place over 2 days and included the most challenging shots the students had ever attempted. Morrison personally designed each scenario to test specific aspects of sniper skills: extreme range accuracy, rapid target engagement, shooting from unconventional positions, and maintaining precision under stress. The first scenario required engaging targets at 1,200, 1,500, and 1,800 meters in sequence, with only 90 seconds between shots to adjust for different environmental conditions at each distance. Sarah watched as other students struggled with the time pressure and complex calculations required for success. When her turn came, she approached each shot with the same methodical process she had developed throughout training. She ignored the time pressure and focused on accuracy. Her first shot at 1,200 meters struck the target center mass. The 1,500-meter shot required adjustment for a crosswind, and she took extra time to ensure her calculations were correct. The shot was successful. The final shot at 1,800 meters was the most challenging she had ever attempted in training, but her preparation paid off. The bullet struck within the scoring zone. Morrison observed each student's performance without comment, making notes on a clipboard that would determine their fate. His expression revealed nothing about what he was thinking. The second day of VU, practical assessment, focused on precision shooting under stress. Students were subjected to various distractions while attempting challenging shots: loud noises, time pressure, physical discomfort, and even verbal harassment designed to break their concentration. Sarah found that the more stressful the environment became, the more focused she became. The chaos around her seemed to fade away when she looked through the rifle scope. Her tremor, which had once been seen as a weakness, actually helped her in some ways. Years of compensating for the slight shake in her hands had taught her to find stillness within movement. During one particularly difficult exercise, Morrison himself served as a distractor, standing behind students and providing a constant stream of commentary designed to break their concentration. Most students struggled to maintain accuracy under his psychological pressure. When Morrison stood behind Sarah, his comments were different. Instead of general harassment, his words were specifically designed to target her perceived weaknesses. "Shaky hands having trouble today, Martinez?" he said quietly. "Maybe you should have chosen a different career field. This isn't a job for people with disabilities." Sarah's first instinct was anger, but she channeled it into focus. She had heard variations of these comments her entire military career. Instead of letting them distract her, she used them as fuel for concentration. Her breathing remained steady. Her sight picture remained clear, and her shot broke cleanly. The bullet struck the center of the target. Morrison continued his commentary. "Lucky shot. Let's see if you can do it again when it really matters." Sarah chambered another round and settled back into position. Morrison's words became background noise as she focused entirely on the shooting process. Shot after shot, she maintained her accuracy despite his attempts to break her concentration. After her final shot, Morrison stepped around to face her. For the first time since she'd met him, he showed emotion. It wasn't anger or disappointment, but something approaching. Respect. Martinez, in 12 years of teaching this course, I've never seen a student maintain that level of accuracy under that kind of psychological pressure. Most students' groups open up by 50% when I'm distracting them. Yours actually got tighter. The final phase was a comprehensive field problem that would last 48 hours. The remaining 6 students, one had been eliminated after the practical shooting assessment, were given individual missions that would test every skill they had learned. Sarah's mission was the most complex yet. She was required to move 8 miles across hostile territory, establish an observation post overlooking a simulated enemy compound, gather intelligence for 24 hours, and then execute precision shots on specific targets while remaining undetected. The mission began at midnight. Sarah moved carefully through the darkness using night vision equipment to navigate the challenging terrain. By dawn, she had reached her assigned area and begun searching for the optimal observation position. The location she selected offered excellent concealment and clear fields of fire to the target area. She spent hours preparing the position, establishing primary and alternate shooting lanes, and creating a hide that would keep her invisible to enemy observation. The intelligence gathering phase required patience and attention to detail. Sarah observed the compound through her spotting scope, documenting patrol patterns, identifying key personnel, and noting security weaknesses. Morrison had designed the scenario to be realistic, with role players maintaining consistent schedules and behaviors that a real sniper would need to learn and exploit. After 18 hours of observation, Sarah had identified her targets and planned her engagement sequence. The shots would be challenging, ranging from 800 to 1,400 meters, and she would need to engage multiple targets quickly before enemy forces could react. The engagement phase began at dawn on the second day. Sarah's first target appeared on schedule, a simulated enemy commander conducting an inspection of the compound perimeter. The shot was at 200 meters with a slight crosswind. Sarah calculated carefully and squeezed the trigger. The target went down cleanly. Within minutes, the second target appeared. This shot was more challenging, requiring her to engage through a narrow gap in the compound's defensive barriers. The bullet had to travel 1,400 meters and pass through, an opening less than 3 feet wide. Sarah adjusted her position slightly, recalculated for the increased distance, and fired. Another successful engagement. The final target was the most difficult, a high-value individual who only exposed himself briefly at irregular intervals. Sarah waited patiently for over an hour before the target presented a suitable shooting opportunity. When the moment came, she had less than 5 seconds to acquire the target, calculate the shot, and engage before he disappeared again. The shot was successful, but Sarah knew that real-world situations would be even more challenging. The field problem had pushed her to her limits, but she had accomplished every mission requirement. That evening, Morrison called the remaining students together for the final evaluation. Sarah looked around the group and realized that these 5 other soldiers represented some of the most capable marksmen in the military. All of them had demonstrated exceptional skills throughout the program. Over the past 10 weeks, you have been pushed harder than most soldiers will ever be pushed, Morrison began. You have demonstrated technical proficiency, mental toughness, and the kind of dedication that separates good soldiers from exceptional ones. He paused, looking at each student individually. All 6 of you will graduate from this program. You have earned the right to call yourselves snipers. 5 years had passed since Sarah Martinez graduated from sniper school, with Master Chief Morrison's personal rifle in her hands. Those years had transformed her from a doubted recruit into one of the military's most respected precision shooters and instructors. She now stood before a new class of sniper school candidates, holding the same rifle that had changed her life. The 24 students sitting before her represented the newest generation of potential snipers. Among them sat Private Elena Vasquez, a young woman whose file indicated she had faced similar doubts about her capabilities. Like Sarah years before, Vasquez had been told by multiple instructors that she lacked the physical attributes necessary for precision shooting.
"Welcome to advanced sniper training," Sarah began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had proven herself in the most demanding circumstances. "Over the next 10 weeks, most of you will discover that you're not cut out for this work."
That's not a failure. It's simply the reality of what we do here. Sarah's reputation had grown considerably since graduation. She had completed 3 combat deployments, during which her precision shooting had saved countless lives and accomplished missions that others deemed impossible. Her longest confirmed kill was at 2,247 meters, a shot taken under extreme conditions that had become legendary among military marksmen. More importantly, she had become one of the military's premier sniper instructors. Her teaching methods, which emphasized mental resilience alongside technical proficiency, had produced some of the most capable snipers in recent years. Students who trained under her consistently outperformed their peers in both training and combat situations. "Before we begin technical instruction," Sarah continued, "I want to share something with you. This rifle belonged to Master Chief Morrison, one of the greatest snipers in military history. He gave it to me when I graduated from this program, not because I was the best shooter in my class, but because he believed I had the potential to carry on his legacy of excellence." She held up Morrison's rifle, allowing the students to see the careful craftsmanship and custom modifications. "This weapon has seen combat on 4 continents and has never failed when accuracy mattered most. Today, I'm going to demonstrate its capabilities, and more importantly, I'm going to choose one of you to carry on this tradition." The students shifted in their seats, suddenly realizing that they were witnessing something significant. Sarah had never publicly offered Morrison's rifle to another shooter, and the military community had speculated about who might eventually receive it. Sarah led the class to the 1,500-meter range, where targets had been set up under challenging conditions. The wind was gusting unpredictably, and heat shimmer made precise aiming difficult. These were exactly the kind of conditions that separated competent shooters from true masters. "Precision shooting isn't about perfect conditions," Sarah explained as she settled behind Morrison's rifle. "It's about delivering accurate fire when everything is working against you. Watch carefully." She demonstrated the complete shooting process, talking through each step as she calculated environmental factors, adjusted for conditions, and prepared for the shot. Her movements were economical and precise, reflecting years of practice and combat experience. The first shot struck the center of the target. Sarah chambered another round and engaged a second target at an even greater distance. Again, a perfect hit. She continued the demonstration, engaging targets at various ranges and conditions, each shot demonstrating the kind of consistency that had made her reputation. "Your turn," she announced to the class. "Each of you will attempt the same shots I just demonstrated. I'm not expecting perfection, but I am expecting effort and proper technique." One by one, the students attempted the challenging shots. Most struggled with the distance and conditions. A few managed decent performance, hitting targets, but not with the precision Sarah had demonstrated. When Private Vasquez's turn came, Sarah noticed the familiar signs of someone fighting against doubt and external expectations. Vasquez settled behind the rifle with obvious nervousness. Her first shot missed the target entirely, drawing snickers from some of her classmates. Sarah recognized the moment immediately. It was the same kind of pressure and doubt she had faced during her own training. "Vasquez, step back from the rifle," Sarah commanded. The class fell silent, assuming the private was about to be dismissed or criticized. Instead, Sarah walked over and spoke quietly. "What did you just do wrong?" "I missed the target, ma'am," Vasquez replied, her voice barely audible. "No," Sarah said firmly. "You listen to what other people think about your capabilities instead of focusing on what you know you can do. I've read your file, Vasquez. You've been told you're not strong enough, not steady enough, not whatever enough for this job. Sound familiar?" Vasquez looked up with surprise. "Yes, ma'am." "Here's what I learned during my training," Sarah continued. "The people who doubt you are usually the same people who've never attempted what you're trying to accomplish. Their opinions are worthless. The only opinion that matters is the target's, and targets don't care about anything except whether you can hit them consistently. She gestured toward the rifle. Try again. This time, forget about everyone watching you. Forget about what people have told you about your limitations. Focus only on the fundamentals we've taught you and trust your ability. Vasquez approached the rifle again, but this time her demeanor was different. She settled into position with more confidence, controlled her breathing, and took her time with the shot. When she squeezed the trigger, the bullet struck the target, near center. Better, Sarah said. Again. The second shot was even more accurate. By the fifth shot, Vasquez had found her rhythm and was consistently hitting the target. The transformation was remarkable, and the other students had stopped snickering. Over the following weeks, Sarah watched Vasquez's progress with particular interest. Like Sarah years before, the young woman demonstrated exceptional natural ability. Once she learned to ignore external doubt. Her technical skills improved rapidly, and her mental resilience grew stronger with each challenge. The final exercise of the program was designed to be the ultimate test. Students were required to complete a complex mission that combined all aspects of sniper training. Success required not just shooting ability, but also tactical thinking, physical endurance, and mental toughness. Vasquez was assigned one of the most difficult missions in the exercise. She had to move 12 miles across hostile terrain, establish an observation post, and engage targets at extreme range while remaining undetected. The mission was similar to the one Sarah had completed during her own graduation, but with additional complications. Sarah monitored Vasquez's progress throughout the exercise. The young woman moved carefully and methodically, taking her time to ensure she remained undetected. When she reached her assigned position, she spent hours preparing her hide and calculating environmental factors for the shot she would need to make. The engagement phase required Vasquez to hit targets at 1,800 meters under challenging conditions. It was the kind of shot that many experienced snipers would find difficult. Sarah watched through a spotting scope as Vasquez settled into position and began her final calculations. The first shot was perfect, striking the target center mass. The second shot, at an even greater distance, was equally successful. Vasquez completed the mission flawlessly, demonstrating the kind of performance that defined exceptional snipers. That evening, Sarah addressed the graduating class. 8 students had successfully completed the program, including Vasquez, who had finished with the highest overall scores. Each of you has earned the right to call yourselves snipers, Sarah began. You have demonstrated the technical proficiency, mental toughness, and dedication that this profession demands. But your education is just beginning. She picked up Morrison's rifle and looked at each graduate individually. 5 years ago, Master Chief Morrison gave me this rifle and challenged me to carry on his legacy of excellence. Today, I'm passing that challenge to the next generation. Sarah walked over to Vasquez and extended the rifle toward her. Private Vasquez, your performance throughout this program has been exceptional. More importantly, you have demonstrated the kind of character and determination that defines true professionals in this field. Vasquez accepted the rifle with obvious emotion. Ma'am, I don't know if I'm worthy of this honor. Sarah smiled, remembering her own feelings when Morrison had made the same gesture years before. Vasquez, worthiness isn't something you're born with. It's something you earn through dedication, hard work, and a commitment to excellence. You've already proven you have what it takes. As the ceremony concluded, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The girl who had been told she would never get it had not only succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, but had also helped others overcome similar doubts about their own capabilities. Morrison's rifle was now in the hands of another deserving shooter, continuing a legacy of excellence that would inspire future generations of precision marksmen. Sarah had learned that the most important thing she could pass on wasn't just technical knowledge or shooting skills, but the confidence to believe in one's own potential despite what others might say. Standing there watching Vasquez hold the rifle that had changed her own life, Sarah realized that her greatest accomplishment wasn't any particular shot she had made or any mission she had completed. It was helping others discover their own capabilities, and proving that determination and hard work could overcome any perceived limitation. The doubters would always exist, but Sarah had learned that their opinions mattered far less than the willingness to prove them wrong, through consistent performance and unwavering dedication to excellence. The legacy continued, passed from one generation of snipers to the next, each one proving that true capability couldn't be judged by first impressions or conventional expectations.